welcome to this new edition of ET Insight, the one show that brings you a 360-degree view of the big picture that's driving business and economy. I'm Supriya Srinath, and here's what we have for you on the show today. India Inc. is increasingly casting its net on foreign shows, partly by choice and partly because it's becoming difficult to do business here. Find out what's driving companies away. So where is corporate India headed, and what is it that makes foreign destinations so attractive? And Commerce and Industry Minister Anand Sharma spells out the government's plans on curtailing rising outbound investment.
If you have 16% manufacturing share in the GDP, it's a very alarming situation.
Straight on to our top story. First, Indian businesses are breaking barriers and setting up businesses across the world. Now, while that may seem as a good trend, it's a rather alarming situation. And that's simply because while the outbound FDI has been on a steady rise, the FDI inflows have only been shrinking. So why is it that corporates prefer to invest overseas? Asha Gopalakrishnan with all the details.
A few decades ago, there were a handful of Indian businessmen who wanted to conquer the world. But in the past 2 decades, Indian business leaders have done all they can to be a part of the global economy. Today, many Indian companies call themselves truly global. But what was the privilege of the big boys club until a few years ago is no longer a matter of choice. It's a compulsion. Companies, particularly those involved in large gestation infrastructure projects, have realized that they need to de-risk themselves from domestic, political and socio-economic issues. And with good reason.
Setting up a project in India is like you are outcast. You can't create industry in India.
According to data released by RBI, in the last month alone, 397 companies have made outward FDI investments of $5.4 billion. That's not all. FDI by Indian companies abroad soared by 144% last year to $43.93 billion from just $17.98 billion the previous year. While India's liberal overseas investment policies could be a reason for companies flocking to different countries, a sudden surge in outbound investments is a cause of worry. That's because there is no corresponding increase in FDI inflow to India. In fact, FDI inflows have fallen year on year between 2010 and 2011 and 2009-2010. This growing concern prompted the Minister of Commerce to engage with the industry players recently.
We discussed everything regarding the economic scenario, the factors which have led to slowdown in capital formation, in mining, in manufacturing. It has been a frank interaction. We have agreed to have a structured format of regular dialogue between industry, which has been taking place, but we will put it in a structured format.
But that's not going to help much because India's problems are one too many. It is battling poor governance and political instability on the one hand. And on the other, it's plagued with high inflation, rising interest and falling demand. The result, a heady mix that no investor, foreign or Indian, can digest.
I think the paralysis that is worrisome, though, is more on the reform side, especially the opening up side, and really implementing this long overdue push in enhancing India's infrastructure bill. This needs to be done urgently.
Now, how many times have we heard that before? But it's time to take it seriously because now the domestic companies are losing faith in the country.
This reflects a discomfort with the Indian investment environment because of all the problems that we are now seeing with executing projects in India. This is a worrisome thing.
So why is the Indian private sector not investing at home and investing abroad? First and foremost, because the cost of capital has risen substantially this past year. Financial investors are tough to find and banks have turned cautious. Simultaneously, costs have risen. It's now far cheaper to raise loans in one country and invest it in another country because resources are cheap compared to India. For instance, several mining companies have raised money in markets like London and invested in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. Apart from high financial and input costs, red tapeism and cumbersome bureaucratic processes are driving India Inc. away.
Today, for example, even if you get a mining license or a prospecting license, from that day till the time you will actually get the ore out to your plant, I really do not know how long it will take. I mean, nobody knows. I mean, let's be very clear, because there are so many clearances. You find something, then suddenly because of our laws, you will find some new laws get introduced. I'll just give you an example of our coal property. You got a coal property for our 5 million or 6 million ton expansion. We have completed the expansion. Now we are told that you have excess forest there. So you can't. Now, how do you operate?
Let's start with the bottom. Land acquisition is a bulk of the problem. The states that are rich in mineral resources like Orissa, West Bengal and Chhattisgarh are the most problematic ones. And companies that have announced plans there are saddled with issues like displacement, disparity in compensation structures, multiplicity of approvals and environment clearances. The classic case is Tata Motors' failed attempts to acquire land in Singur, and POSCO's never-ending attempt to acquire land in Paradeep in Orissa. Many corporates have had similar problems in acquiring land for setting up projects or expansion.
You will recollect that they allowed us to start construction in late 2006, December 2006. Lease was executed in March 2007. So 1,800 crores invested in that period of time. It would be ridiculous to suggest that a person investing 800 crores would suddenly get up one day and abandon it and go to some other state.
From land acquisition to the maze of India's regulatory environment, India ranks 134th out of 183 economies in terms of ease of doing business in Doing Business Report 2011. The report lists India 165th in starting a business, 177th in dealing with construction permits and 182nd in enforcing contracts. The sentiment is similar back home. Of the 500 leading corporates surveyed by industry body ASSOCHAM, over 85% of respondents said the bureaucrats delay the decision-making process. According to Projects Today, in the last financial year, 692 projects at an estimated cost of 1.7 lakh crore rupees were stalled.
We all know we need to do a lot of work on the infrastructure side in India, and obviously some of the laws that we have needs to be looked at in light of the current environment and the current situation of the economy. So obviously that does play a part in the outbound investment strategy that any group will have.
India needs to change its image on an urgent basis because this is a vicious cycle. Outbound capital deprives the economy of precious funds which could be used for growth and capacity expansion. The recent controversies and scandals have made investors nervous, and there is little or no pull factor to attract more money. That is bad news. But India's loss is a gain for several economies, as all that investment helps in creating more employment opportunities and sets a business cycle in motion. And why not? The global lure is a temptation hard to resist.
So which are the countries playing host to India Inc. and what is it that they're offering? Find out that and a whole lot more on the other side of this very short break.